Hi. So today we're going to talk about conjugation. And first we have to talk about what is conjugation. Conjugation is when you take the verb and you change it or you manipulate it so that it sounds right with the subject of the sentence. For example, which is a correct conjugation? I run. I runs. Which sounds right? I run or I runs? I run is the correct conjugation. In this one, he run, he runs. Which one is the correct conjugation? He runs. We changed the verb by adding an S on here. That is called conjugation, when you change the verb so that it sounds right with the subject. And so that's what we're going to learn how to do. We're going to learn how to conjugate German verbs so they sound correct with the subject. So the first thing you have to know is, and this is a very important term, is the infinitive verb. The infinitive verb is a verb that has not yet been conjugated. It's in its natural state. Now, in English, our infinitive verbs are expressed with two words, with the word to in front of it. So the English infinitive for run is to run, to play. This is what we call an infinitive: to run, to play, to fly, to live. That's an infinitive. That is a verb that has not yet been conjugated. In German, it's only one word. It's the verb itself, but that verb ends in en. The en on a verb shows you that that verb is in the infinitive form. So here we have the English infinitive, to play, and the German infinitive is spielen. This en shows you that it's not yet been conjugated. It's in its infinitive form. To work is arbeiten. To live is wohnen. To fly is fliegen. These are infinitive verbs. That's a very important word for you to know going forward. Okay, so now we're ready to conjugate. So step one, when you have a German verb, is to take the en, the thing that makes it an infinitive verb, take that off. Let's watch that again. Now we're ready to conjugate. Step one, take the en off. Now we're ready to make this verb agree with all the subjects that we have. We are going to conjugate it so it has subject-verb agreement. So here are our subjects: I, you, he, she, it, which will always conjugate the same because they're third person singular, we, they, and you formal, and you guys. This is the plural you. Remember, in German there are three yous. There's you informal, there's you formal, and there's you plural. Do you remember some of these pronouns already? I is ich, you is du, he is she is sie, it is es, we is wir, they is sie, you formal is sie, always capitalized, and you guys is ihr. Now, one weird thing you probably notice right off the bat is there are three Z's: Sie, she, Sie, they, and Sie, you formal. One way to tell the difference, is it she or is it they, is how the verb is conjugated. If you look at the conjugated verb, it will let you know if we're talking about Sie, she, or Sie, they. Sie, you, is always capitalized. Okay, so here's our handy dandy chart. Remember, step 1 was to take the en off. Step 2 is to add the correct ending to agree with the subjects, and you just have to memorize these. So here are our pronoun subjects: I, you, he, she, it, we, they, you formal, and you guys, ear. So these will always conjugate the same, and these will always conjugate the same. So here we have our infinitive verb. We know it's infinitive because it has an en ending. So what was step 1? Step 1 was to take the en off. Now we're going to add our ending so that we have subject-verb agreement. I go. Ich gehe. Du gehst. This one's easy to remember because it spells the word dust. D-U-S-T. Dust. You go. Du gehst. I go. Ich gehe. He goes. She goes. It goes. Sie, es geht. This one you can remember if you think to yourself, he, she, it. The last one ends in T. Geht, sie geht, es geht. We go, they go, you formal, go. This one takes the infinitive form of the verb. And you plural, you guys go, takes the T ending. You'll want to have these endings memorized. So now let's take a look at the verb wohnen. This is the infinitive form, and in English the infinitive is to live. We're going to drop this en off, figure out what the subject in each sentence or question is, and put the verb in. So this first one is, where do you live? Do is our subject, so we're going to take the en off, and remember dust, so this one's going to be wohnst. I live in Goddard. Take the en off, and the ending for ich is e, so ich wohne. He does not live in Goddard. He lives in Wichita. Take the en off, he, she, it, so that's going to take a t. Wohnt nicht in Goddard. Wohnt in Wichita. And she, where does she live? He, she, it ends in T, so it's another T. Wo wohnt sie? Where does she live? She lives in Goddard. Sie wohnt in Goddard. Now, what happens if you don't have a pronoun as your subject? The subject in this sentence is meine Mutter, my mother. And you're not quite sure how to conjugate for my mother. So imagine yourself, if you take this out of the sentence and replace this with a pronoun, what pronoun would you replace this with? My mother lives in Goddard. She lives in Goddard. So that tells us how we're going to conjugate for my mother. So again, he, she, it, wohnt. Kommen, the infinitive verb to come. Where do you come from? Woher kommst du? Remember dust, D-U-S-T. I come from Germany. Ich takes E. Ich komme aus Deutschland. And your father? If I take your father out of the sentence and replace it with a pronoun, I replace it with he. Here's he. And your father? Kommt auch aus Deutschland? Does he also come from Germany? And your mother? Where does she come from? He, she, it, T. And now you can conjugate.